Hi guys. So today we're going to be looking at blocking in portraits. I'm thinking primarily about the sort of block structure of a portrait, essentially the sort of planal aspect of what we're drawing. I'm just going to be using a few Sargent drawings as the basis. So we'll get started with this profile that I have up on screen. It's not going to be an exact copy of the Sargent, but we're going to be thinking about sort of how we can sort of conceptualize the way the light is hitting this head. And we're keeping things almost down to a, should we say, almost like a sort of rectangular prism aspect. So if we were to simplify the back of the head and then the top of the head, the front slope of the face, and the neckline. I'm going to be doing about 4 of these. Perhaps just a slight little angle back up for that chin. So this is the sort of outside boundary of our shape. But what we want to think about now is, what are the kind of major planes of the face? The head tends to have, or the skull tends to have, sort of general structures. So flat, we've got sort of the flat side of the head, the back of the head and the front of the head. So the front of the head roughly occupies maybe this much of the drawing. Then we've got a sort of bottom plane of the head there. The back of the head then sort of slopes back to about this level. Perhaps angling a little bit more forward here. We've got that little crease of the neck. So we can find this contour of the plane, but we're concerned with where does the sort of back plane occur. So the light's coming from this direction. So this is the back plane of our head in the drawing. So we can sort of slightly more neatly get this in, make it reasonably dark. Just neaten back that edge and put a little bit of a angle back here. So that roughly gives us the back plane of the head there. Actually, I just realized I should probably drop that down a little bit. And then below that point we've got the sort of collar sits there, and then the slope of his jacket as well, back. Just to contextualize this head structure a bit. So next we have the front plane, and the front plane also has a bit of a sort of angling back going on. So this is roughly where the brow is. You can see the eye. Then we've got our cheekbone angling down, connecting down to this front plane. Then an angle back for the forehead, sort of up to about there, and that little slope forward for the forehead at the front. So then the mid plane is going to be a mid value. It's more of a dark halftone value. And that separates it out from the front of the face. So the final thing that's probably worth sort of having a look at is maybe a bit more of a few specific angles back in for the profile, which we did last week actually. We had a little lesson on profiles. So you got where the chin juts out there. This little angle forward, where the nose sticks out. Hair there. So you can see approximately, even just with this much detail blocked in, we can start to make out a lot of the major structures of the face. What we're primarily thinking about are these large planes. So we've got our back plane, our sort of mid plane, and then our front plane. And they roughly sort of fit into these points. And so that's a really useful way of sort of conceptualizing heads as we draw them. So I'm going to do at least another sort of one or two. Maybe, yeah, probably two more would be good. So I'm going to get another one up now. Just another sergeant drawing again. So this one a front-on image. So again, we can kind of just roughly block in the rectangle. So he's got a pretty rectangular head, this guy. So something like this is a approximation of his head. And again, we want to think about sort of darker plane, so our sort of side plane, which roughly runs sort of down there, and then we've got a mid plane which roughly occupies this side of the head, and then we've just got pretty much everything else is the front plane. So this one's fairly straightforward. We're almost kind of thinking of it like if we look at a rectangular prism, we've got the front plane, and then we just have the sort of side plane traveling back, which is in shadow. But obviously we can break it down to be a little bit more complex than that. So again, we can just angle back in a bit, capture a bit more of a specific shape for this guy's head. Trying to keep it fairly blocky though. So we go down the side of the neck there. So again, the cheek is sort of forming a bit of a line, jutting out line, which connects to this jaw, which makes its way across the face. So we can shade all that side plane in as darker, and then we've got the opposing side, which kind of makes its way up, sort of across there, something like that. And the little jutting out ear shape. So that's our side darker plane, and in terms of kind of mid planes on this one, it's fairly brightly lit from in front, so the mid plane is kind of slightly less significant, maybe juts out to about sort of that point there. And that roughly captures, again, those three sort of major value groups. So you've got our shadows on this right hand edge. Then our darker halftones basically make up the second planal group. And then that front of the face, and they're obviously going to be, you know, sort of in this point here. We're going to have some little other cutbacks where, for instance, the nose exists, or the nose sits, where the brow is kind of connecting across and so forth. If we were to start to kind of break it down further and find more specific stuff going on. But as a general rule, that's what we're sort of thinking about in these major kind of blocking groups. So we'll do a third and final one. I'm just going to get a different reference up. Maybe we'll maybe do 4, so we'll do a couple more quick ones. So I've got this female portrait now. Slightly different sort of shape because of the hair, this one, so we'll just kind of quickly capture those shapes. Something like that approximately captures her head. And again, we're going to look for the contour down the side, so the shadows kind of go down, drop into the neck. The darker shadow mostly makes its, or sort of darker value plane makes its way down this edge. Maybe a little bit lower there. But what we're looking for is this contour. We're always looking for this contour that sort of runs down the side of the face. This is the side plane of the skull, the head that we're looking at when we're doing this stuff. And it sort of merges into the hair in this one. So something like that. So that's our side plane again, and we've then got, extending out of it, the mid plane. And again, if we were to extend it, we could find the sort of plane of the nose. The nose plane is always something that sort of juts out from the rest of the head. So it sort of sits slightly distinct or sort of separate. Looking at this, I'd probably bring in some of these lines, obviously, to balance it out. Otherwise it feels a bit too wide. But yeah, the nose would be something like this as a sort of plane that sticks out. And then we got that connection of the brow. And you can see that's sort of how our face is roughly starting to emerge. If we start to elaborate. And we're just using, so all the time I've just been using these kind of blockier shapes. Trying to find those contours. So all of them are starting to emerge, they've got a bit of form, and that's what we're thinking about when we're drawing portraits early on, are these forms, these planal structures. So we'll just do one more. I've got another portrait here, so this is going to be the final one. And again, just following the same process, so block it in as a general sort of rectangle. The light's coming from this side as well, and then we've got sort of this whole section here is in light. We've got the darker shadow there, and then a sort of moderately light mid-plane on this side. That roughly is how this one's structured. So we can go in and find the specific shapes of those shadows. Again, working our way along the contour. In this instance, kind of tracking the nose quite a bit. So that's a very small section of the side plane. In this instance, the nose actually juts out as a sort of form of the light plane. So part of it's going to be, the front part of it's going to be a mid plane. Separate from this, I'll just knock back this shadow a bit. So we've got that nose sort of jutting out as a little bit of a mid plane in this one. I'm going to darken this slightly more than it probably appears in the original, just to make it all fairly clear. There are also some sort of, again, slightly different notes. There's like the little corner of the mouth there that runs across, probably a slight extension out of the bottom lip. There's some different stuff going on generally. So it's slightly trickier on this one actually, but you start to see that again, the kind of shapes of the head emerging. Maybe merge that. So I've actually changed the boundary quite a lot again, I've kind of pulled it back out to where we find the side planes of the head. So you can see the importance of being sort of aware of those. They're kind of doubling, angling back together, creates a symmetry, an important symmetry in the profile. And it would make us probably reassess, actually maybe not, the back of the head's probably about there. Maybe it angles back up a little bit more to there. We've got our ear in place, and the back side of the neck, and the clothing which sort of sits below. But there you can see that one's now starting to roughly block in reasonably nicely. Perhaps not quite as clearly as the others, but then the shadow pattern is a little bit lacking. But just to mark them all up, we've then got so this is our front plane, mid, back, and generally the front, mid and back, they kind of relate to the how dark the value is going to be. So we've got front, mid, back, and this one, the side plane is the side of the head is the front plane, that's the lighter one. That's our mid plane, and that's our back plane. So in all these instances, all the portraits are structured in a way that the shape becomes very clear based on these planal structures. So yeah, that's it for today. Hopefully that's nice and clear and useful for you guys. Another standalone one. We might be doing starting a series next week. As always, you can follow the YouTube channel for more videos like this, and if you want to sign up for tuition, you can follow the link through to get expert advice from myself and other tutors in painting and drawing skills. But yeah, that's it. I'll see you guys soon.